For more on this, we're joined by David Dunn. He is a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. Thank you so much, Professor, for being with us on the program today. Now, I think everyone agrees that the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan was disastrous, and now the Biden administration is trying to put the blame on Trump. What do you make of all this?
Well, I think it's important to see the withdrawal in the wider context. The 2020 Doha Agreement that Trump struck with the Taliban more or less committed America to abandon Afghanistan, to withdraw all troops, to release prisoners, Taliban prisoners. It also accepted that a limitation on visas for Afghans who had helped the Americans leaving Afghanistan. So the whole frame of the operation, eventual withdrawal from Afghanistan, was framed by the limitations of that. And that, as the Biden administration said, massively constrained its freedom of action. Biden delayed the departure from May to August, and they worked quickly. And of course, the Trump administration refused to cooperate during the transition between Biden's election and his inauguration, making that even more complicated. Of course, President Trump denied the validity of the Biden victory and therefore refused to cooperate. So there is that wider picture of America being really faced with a difficult situation. And of course, when Biden took over, more than half the country was either under Taliban control or Taliban contested. So actually the ability and the military, American military was massively withdrawn. So America's ability to military sustain its presence there was an impossibility unless there was a massive influx of American troops, which would have been a breach of the Doha Agreement. So you can see why the Biden administration is keen to actually try and paint the wider picture rather than just to accept responsibility all for itself.
Right, but what does this tell us about the preparedness of the Biden administration in critical situations as the one that they faced? I mean, Biden took office in January, and the last U.S. military personnel and aircraft that left Afghanistan was in August. As you mentioned, they pushed the time of that agreement by a couple months. They had several months to plan a proper execution, don't you think?
They had several months, and what this 12-page report says is that the America needs to learn lessons. And what it says is that there are several military reports, after-action reports, that are critical, where lessons can be learned, but for operational reasons, they will remain secret. And of course, it's quite convenient that is the case for them. But the wider picture is also important. What the Biden administration is saying is that actually America has learned those lessons, and the way in which it approached the intelligence operation in support of Ukraine was informed by the lessons they learned in Afghanistan. And more widely, the fact that Afghanistan has been withdrawn from, rather than actually America engaging in a ground war to try and shore up its position there, means that America is in a better position to support Ukraine and prepare for defense against China. So they're trying to actually, rather than focus on Afghanistan, to see that wider picture, the wider strategic global context.
And looking at the situation there now, it's being ruled by the Taliban, and Afghans, they feel like they're back at square one.
Yeah, well, it's in many ways you can argue that. Certainly in terms of women's rights and human rights, the Taliban are behaving, despite what they said, very much like the Taliban of old. What the Biden administration would say is that the threat from terrorism that America entered Afghanistan to try and quash has gone global. And they point to terrorism operations, activity throughout the Sahel, other parts of the Middle East, and they say it's not a good use of resources to focus only on Afghanistan, when actually the threat from terrorism, such as it is, has metastasized around the world.
All right, Professor David Dunn, thank you so much for joining us here on the NewsHour and sharing that insight with us.